Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create a procedurally generated glitch title intro with Blender and Jsplacement. So the first thing you want to do is go to this site or just search up Jsplacement on JSplacement, like JavaScript I guess, on Google, and then you want to install it. I'm guessing you all can figure that out yourselves. Then we open it. This is a free software, by the way. Thank you, developer. And we want to go to this grid thing and open up the menu, and we need to select .grid. Then we'll generate a displacement map. So this is going to be sort of a background texture, and you can adjust it so it looks good to you. And you can change all of these, just don't click invert. And this is going to be sort of our background texture. So once you've clicked generate, you want to save it as a height map. I already have one here, so I'll just overwrite it and keep it. Great. Now we need to go to Blender. So the first thing we're going to do is import this background. Now, you do this by going to Image and Images as Plane from the Add menu, which is accessed by Shift-A. That might not appear though, so it's possible that you'll have to go to your preferences and enable it as an add-on. So you need to make sure this is enabled. Okay, so once you've got that working, you need to go to Import, Images as Planes. You need to find that background texture. Oops, sorry. First, we need to find that background texture, and we need to change this setting to Emit. Having it as diffuse is not going to look as good as having an emission texture, because we don't really want the background to receive shadows or reflections or things like that. So we need to import it like this, and you'll see right now we want this to be transparent except for the white parts. So how do we do that? Just need to make a small change in the shading tab. If it's not there, you can click this plus button and add it. Using the look dev mode kind of messes you up because it won't show it as transparent, so we need to change this to rendered. And make sure you have this set on cycles and not Eevee, because right now Eevee doesn't handle transparency so well. You can use Eevee if you want to, but you'll have to change some of the alpha blend settings. So the only change we need to make here is to take this alpha node, disconnect it from the factor, and we need to instead use the color node as the factor, now as the factor input, and now we can see how this whole thing is transparent. So we need to position this flat, so I just press 3 to center it on the side view mode, and then Control-Alt-0 to focus the camera on it. And now we got to scale this up a little bit bigger than our camera is, because I want to animate this moving, say, left and right. And what we can do, since this is transparent, is add extra layers, so we can make more of these planes. Just make sure they're bigger than the camera. So, and when we actually animate it, we can animate them going in different directions, each of them. And why don't we do that right now? Okay, so we don't want this to be 250 however frames. Sorry. So we're just going to change it to a smaller number, say 80 or 100 or something like that. Usually these intros aren't supposed to be super long. So now we're going to keyframe the location of the sorry. We're going to keyframe the location of all of these planes, and we do that by selecting them, press I, and location. And it'll probably be easiest just to have a simple, a single movement. So we're going to move this front plane to, say, the left, sorry, to the that way's left. Okay, great. To the left, maybe moving it back a little bit. Okay, so just make sure the edge of this is still in the frame, and hit I, keyframe the location, and now we'll see that it moves left to right right to left as we move along this animation timeline. And we'll do the same thing with the rest of them. So we go to the last frame, move it somewhere, I location, we stay here, and we have this move upwards. And we can see how they all move together. Okay, great. So now our next step is to add in some text. So we go to text. We want to rotate this so it faces the camera, so we rotate it first on the x-axis, 90 degrees, and then on the z-axis, 90 degrees. And we want to try to make sure it's not intersecting with one of these planes, so we can move it up a little bit on the x-axis. And we'll see how it looks from the camera view. Scale it down a little bit. Now, you can change this text to whatever you want. I'm going to change this to my channel name, digital. And there we go. And just scale it with S to make sure it fits in the frame. You can try to center it if you want. It doesn't really matter to me. Okay, so this has a diffuse texture right now, so if we were to deselect it, you wouldn't really be able to see it. So let's just apply a simple emission texture. So now it's nice and bright. Up the intensity a little bit, which will be useful when we add glare. And now we can change the font if you want to. The Blender default font already looks pretty good, but I like the hack font for these sort of intros. You can download that for free from this website. It'll be in the description. So I'll just pick one and scale it down so it fits again. Great, so we're done with all the basic parts pretty much. Now it's just to compositing. So we'll go to the compositing tab. First select use nodes, and it would be good to render an image just so we can see what it looks like. But first, if you're in cycles and you have a sampling set pretty high, you can set something like 5, because we're not calculating any light bounces. All our materials are emissive, so it doesn't matter at all. And this will render much faster as well. Okay, great. So we can see our background right now. Everything looks pretty normal, I think. So the idea here is that we're going to take this image and we're going to shift it to the right or left or up or down some way. We're going to change it a little bit, and then we're going to mix it with the original image. And the way we're going to do that is by adding a transform node and a mix node. So you want to take this and plug it in, like so, and you'll see nothing's changed. That's alright. So first we've got to, we're going to displace it on the x-axis. So I'll just put some random number here, and you can see what this looks like. Now we're going to overlay this with the original image, which looks like this. But we're only going to overlay certain parts, so it'll look like it's parts of the image are shifted to the left or right, and parts are not. And the way we're going to do that is by changing this factor input. And first, we've got to generate a texture. The clouds setting works the best for this, so we need to change it to cell noise, and we'll name this something like distortion. You don't really need to do much with these settings. because we're going to change them manually. Okay, so as the input, we'll take this distortion texture. So we add this node. Value or color doesn't really matter. These are all values anyways because it's black and white, so you can take either. And distortion. And now you'll see it kind of looks like we've overlaid both of the images over each other, but it doesn't really look right because we have parts of it being distorted differently, and we basically only want to have black and white. We don't want parts of these images to be distorted partially. We want it to either be undistorted or completely distorted. And the way we're going to do that is by adding a color ramp, which you'll find under the converter color ramp. Okay, right now this won't do anything, so we need to change this to constant. So what this basically does is make sure that only the colors here, which are all different shades of gray, just turn into black and white. And we can change this setting to see which parts are completely black and which parts are completely white. And we'll also see what these colors mean. And it's a good idea in general to keep in mind that black is 0 and white is 1. So if we have this as 0 right now, all we can see is the original image. This image, if we were to look at it directly through this node, would just be completely black. But if we were to increase this white value, we see that more parts of this will become white. And we'll just move this forward. And if you completely move it over to the side, it'll completely change into the other image, so this transformed image. And we don't want that. So we need to keep it around the middle. And so we can see how we have parts of this image distorted and shifted, and some of it not. But none of them are like partially shifted, if that makes any sense. So another thing we can change here is the offset. So we can actually move this image left or right as well, adding another layer of like complexity to it. And basically we'll be animating all of these parameters. We can also change the scaling mode. So you can see how this becomes more and more compressed as we increase it. We don't really want to do that. And you can pretty much just play around with these settings until you find something that looks good. Now, some final polishing details. I want to change the background because it doesn't look very good, so I'm going to set it to a sort of dark indigo color. And you'll have to re-render to see it. That's a bit too bright. Okay, that looks okay to me. And we can add some glare as well. So I like changing this to fog glow, so it'll look like that. You can turn down the threshold a little bit, maybe to 0.8. And we can also add some distortion via the advanced distortion node. So click projector and turn on dispersion to enable this sort of chromatic aberration around the edges. Now too much of this kind of looks ugly, so turn it down a little. And finally, we can add some depth of field. So to do that, we'll need to add a camera focus, which is just any empty. So put this here. I'll rename it to focus. And click this camera in the depth of field tab. Select the focus object to be your focus. And that's not going to do anything yet because we need to add a defocus node. So filter, defocus, and this is in our original mode setup. So deselect preview, use Z buffer, connect this depth node to the Z, so it's actually receiving the depth information from the scene. And to change the amount of defocusing we can see, and we can already see a little bit, we need to change the f-stop. So the lower the number, the more defocused the camera becomes. So if we set it to like 10, so we'll stop being able to see the background very well. Any more than that and it gets kind of messed up, I think. But yeah, make sure you uncheck preview because this just changes it to a lower quality. And yeah, so all you need to do right now is to animate this. So I'll give you a sense of what that looks like. So what I want this to look like is a normal image, which slowly gets distorted and then comes back to normal. So remember, the original image is when this color ramp is given a value of 0 or completely black. And we'll keyframe that at, say, frame 15, and so that's when I want the distortion to start. So we'll keyframe this position of the white one to be at the end, or so it doesn't show up at all. So we'll keyframe that position by hovering our cursor over this position parameter and hitting I. Then we're going to move up a few frames, and we're going to move this all the way back, and we'll get a quick preview of what it looks like. And we'll keyframe it again. We'll move it another few frames. Move this. And remember, we can also change the offsets, but you need to keyframe it first. So over the offset, change it to another direction. Keyframe it. Keyframe this. And we just keep going with this. And yeah, so remember, these parameters can also be keyframed. Make sure you just set an initial keyframe before we start distorting it, otherwise it's not going to look very good. And at the end, once we're all done with this, we want to set it so that this is back to normal. We'll keyframe it again. And once we render this, I'll show a final image at the end. Then we're done. Now another thing you could do is animate this text so it maybe slides in from the back or from above or something, or it fades in by changing its transparency. There's a lot of extensions you can make to this. I'd be interested to see what you make. So if you make anything, I guess you can post in the comments or just message me, and maybe I'll share it on the channel. Alright, so that's it.